everyone, it's Martha Novak making last minute notes. This is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, and I'm so glad you're joining us this morning. I hope it's a good morning for you. Beautiful here where we are, and that's nice after all the rain that we have had lately. Guys, I hope you're well and healthy. Today we're talking about, different aspects of authenticity. Just about every show I do is on some aspect of that, or what's in the way of that, And we're talking. I really do think these things are linked to the authenticity of who we really are, without pretending or without imploding into a fantasy of what we think we're not. We're very nice people. Certainly all of you that listen to a show like this, very nice people. Hello, good morning, Lisa. Oh, and good morning, Kat. Oh, well, thank you so much. Kat said she missed me from last week. I'm so glad. I hate to be doing this and everybody says, oh, you were gone? Who cares? Not so hot. Anyway, thank you so much, Kat. That means a lot to me. And that all of you all listen in and occasionally let me know that you're there. Thank you very much. That's very sweet. Yes, authenticity and being really happy are linked. We're going to talk about that. Again, we're going into some of my notes I made on this. But I found also a wonderful article by Gregory Yantz, PhD. Apparently he might have written, I think it's a book that he wrote called Hope for Relationships. That's a nice title. And the title of this article is 4 Ways to Be a More Authentic Person. So we're going to start talking about that in just a minute before we go back into my notes. Hello, Karen. Oh, love and hugs to you too. Guys, if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, people are writing me, and many of them dear friends on Facebook Live. You can, oh, by the way, I have an announcement to make. This is our first show with a new system in place. You're going to have to let me know if it's working better. Please do. We got some sort of satellite via a company called Viasat, and it seems to be working better than our old system. Much better in terms of we actually are getting some Roku now. We are actually getting some internet, and because we broadcast over some of these systems, not necessarily with Facebook Live, but with certainly Blog Talk Radio, please do let me know if this is working better. That makes all the difference. The reason I think it's going to affect the Facebook Live is because we have more speed. We went from 0.7, which was the top speed we could get with this old system. Yeah, woohoo, Kat. All the way to 35. Who knew? So let's see if the speed doesn't support both these platforms. At least I certainly hope so. We'll see. It's a sunny day today. And if it's going to go down, it's going to go down on a rainy day and a stormy day. So we will have yet to see about that one. But anyway, I'm hoping for the best. You all let me know. Please do let me know and write in and say, I'm not pixelated anymore, or I am, or it's my natural pixelation, which could also be. All right, let's do a prayer, get us all in the right spot, particularly me, and we will go forward with the lesson today. Thank you so much for being with us. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for this life we have, even if we are interested in change. We are all interested in change and growth. We're also afraid of it. So we open ourselves now to the peace beyond all understanding that does lie deep within us, that is awakening to tell us we're fine, this moment is perfect, and that we are not alone here, but that you are always present. We're either using you or not using you in our belief system. Wake us all up to the living God in all of us. Thank you so much, dear God, as we do this work. We open the pathway to our highest selves. We ask to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We thank you so much for all of this, dear God, as we say gladly, we know nothing, for it is the you, through us and through all things, that knows it all. We open to that and say thank you, God, for everything. And so it is. Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go, before I go into my list, let's go to the 4 ways to be a more authentic person. I'm looking around right now in my authenticity for some Kleenex, which I don't have because my nose runs in the pollen. But we will just have to make do. If it gets really bad, I'll go to the restroom, and I know there's one in there. This was an article, 4 Ways to be a More Authentic Person, from Gregory Yance, PhD, who wrote a book called Hope for Relationships. But I very much liked this article. I found nothing wrong with it. The only problem for me and a lot of literature that comes out on the subject of happiness and authenticity is they tell you what to do. Okay? Be mindful, for example. Well, that's a lovely thing, and we all should. We can't do it. Why can't we do it? It's built into us to be authentic and stay in the moment. We have tons of issues and blocks to staying in the moment. I mean, the whole ego child's mind system that started coming up with the ego about 18 months old was there solely to bring you out of the present. It projects in the future based on bad past experiences. So you're looking out for them all the time, even if you don't know it. That's what the ego child's mind does. It also makes sense of your world according to appearances, according to your issues, you see? So these things are said, and they are, I think it's good to have them said. Part of me believes that. Part of me says not so good to have them said without telling you how to get there. Certainly, as someone who, throughout my life, hi there. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Oh, look, my husband not only gave me, thank you, sweetie, I appreciate it so much. Not only gave me Kleenex, he gave me paper towels. That shows you that he knows I have a problem this time of year. Oh, what a sweet husband. Anyway, as someone who has been on this path for a long time in my own life, don't think for a moment that I don't know the struggles to do this, because I do. I mean, we're all in this together as humans. But one of the things I've always tried to do in this program and is to give you what to do. Now, clients that I work with in 2-hour sessions don't always see. I will always say, here's what to do about that. And they'll say, oh, what am I supposed to do? And I'll say, I gave it to you. Here's what to do. Oh, I don't say, here's what to do. Now, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that you don't hear it. And I'm not saying you don't hear it. I mean, I don't know what your process is, but there's a reason that human beings don't always hear it, because it's very challenging, and because all of us get something out of the old way. Even if the old way is pure crap, we still do it because it's the old way. And there's something enormously hooking into that. I mean, that hooks us. And that is that it's familiar. I think you'll agree that most human beings would rather navigate a rocky stream when they know where the rocks are than to ever pull the canoe out, take the effort to pull the canoe out and go to someplace else where it's smooth sailing. We say we want that, but applying the effort and, are you ready for the word? The change it will take within us often intimidates us not to do it. I think the best lives are the lives that eventually work on something that I'm going to put on the table right now. 2 words: radical change. We all need to be ready for radical change. Now, if that sends shivers up your spine, don't let it. The truth is, anybody who is on a path of consciousness and enlightenment, like you are, like we all are here in this community, we have to know eventually in our work that God's everything. God's the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the this and the that, and it's according to our understanding, you see? So if we can change our understanding, how do we do that? Let me mention to you the way our system works. What I do is I am trying to change the energy under your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. It's an energy psychology, okay? If I can change that energy in a few weeks to a few months, depending on how ingrained whatever it is, sometimes it goes away in a session. If I can change that energy, you know what we can do? We can change the trajectory of your life. We can change why you do certain things, why you think certain things, why you feel certain things. Because it's all energy to begin with. Isn't that exciting? Everything is changeable. You're not destined. There is no such a thing as destiny to always suffer, destiny to pull in the wrong relationships or the right ones, depending on how you look at it. It's not destiny. It is what we're doing. And let's change that. Yeah, I think I told you the story in some radio show somewhere. But when I was a kid, I remember I was about 7 years old. I was in the theater when I was small, for most of my life, as a matter of fact. And I was standing off stage, and an adult woman was standing behind me. I was ready to go on the stage for the next scene, and a man came off. I don't know what we were doing, musical comedy or a comedy or something, but he came off the stage and he said to the adult behind me, "Dull audience tonight." And I knew at 7 years old it wasn't what the audience was doing. It was us. We were creating that in the audience. It took me many years to figure out why. The information does come to us when we ask those questions, but we have to be ready to receive the answer, right? And of course, the answer came as my whole system, because it had to do with the energy level in which we were performing. If we were performing in ego child's energy, we were pulling on the audience. We wanted a response from them. If we were performing in best self, highest self energy, and the energy of sharing and being all together in this, we got quite the different response. If you want to read more about that, hear more about that, I should say, see more about that, we have a DVD on it. It's called the It Series. And it's very powerful for people who want to physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually get to the peak performance state. It's an adjustment of energy in the body. Doesn't even have to do with your issues. It has to do with an energy level. Okay. I think it's marvelous for us to stand here together and talk about the ways to be happy, the ways to be authentic. His first point, Dr. Yance, is be keenly self-aware. And I think that's absolutely true. If there is anything at the base of my extensive list on how to be authentic, right, It is, for God's sake, let's wake up and find out what we're doing so we can either stop it or enhance it and go on and have wonderful lives. I think a great deal of the IT series, that program, has to do with, because I've taught that in businesses all across, actually, North America. And what I hear sometimes from clients is, I never knew what I was doing when I succeeded like that, or I never knew what I was doing when I failed like that. Of course, I don't believe in failure. I believe in mistakes that we correct. Then nothing's a failure. But you've got to know what you're doing. You see? You've got to figure this out. And it is in the esoteric realm. Ladies and gentlemen, you just don't have to not know anymore. Good morning. Oh, hello, George. I am so glad you're joining us today. That's true. We haven't talked for a while, and I've been off the air. Last week, I am writing a book, so I took the weekend to find out what I was doing wrong, and reading a lot of books on wait a minute, I gotta add this element. I found out, by the way, that I'm just not a real good villain. And that's what I'm having to give a lot of energy and research to. What makes a good villain, for God's sake? Because I don't think I have those bones in my body anymore, if I ever did. So going back to Dr. Yancey's article, Be Keenly Self-Aware. He goes on to say, and I do want to quote him, as with many paths to self-improvement, you must start with observing yourself. I'm going to say the paths to self-improvement. All right, I think, as he says, as with many, I think with all that are effective, you better be self-aware. We have to be, kids. I mean, everything that we do is based on what we're doing that is optimal and what we're doing that isn't optimal, and this shady little area in between where we don't get anything. It's very important that we look at ourselves and see what's in the way. And you know what? My advanced classes, they're so cute. I enjoy working with them so much. But when we all started out about 18, 20 years ago together, such big secrets. And we had to work ourselves up to say, let me tell you what I do. And then everybody, what the response was everybody does it, after being together this long. And these people all know each other so well, right? Oh, it's like, we're just so glad it's caught. That's all it is. We're just so glad it's caught so we can correct it and we can go on. And we find it so helpful to talk about, well, I do this, and here's why I do it, and somebody else say, this is why I do it, and the original person will say, oh my God, I never thought of that. That's absolutely why I do it, and everybody leaves healed. It's very important not to have these secrets. You see, all your issues are secrets, aren't they? Yeah, they are. They're pretty much secrets. They're even sometimes secrets from us. And that's where the self-awareness comes into play, because there are things that none of us really know about ourselves until we do. Why isn't that all right? That's the system, isn't it? That's the esoteric journey. So it's very important that you know yourself. And that's one of the things that I always try to do with these radio shows is, let's talk about this area that you might not have heard of before. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Let's put this on the table. And if you all will just own that, so many people, when they want to keep their stuff, they'll say to me, are you ready? They'll say, that matches me a little bit. Or I'm a little bit like that. And what I'm writing down in a session is, I absolutely have that. I own that. I am that. But I've got to get them to the place where they're saying, oh, absolutely, I'm all of that. Just get it. Because otherwise they're saying, I want to hold on to it, and here's a little piece. I'll acknowledge this part. You can have that. Like taking clothes to Goodwill or to any kind of a place like that. What we do is we will take the things, give the things we don't want first, right? Well, consciousness works like that. You give me layers, You give me layers, you give me layers, then we get down to some core issues, and you don't want to let those go because that's your operating system, you see? But what good is it? It's not getting you what you want. You've had your whole life to prove it did, and it didn't. So now it's time for, here are the words again, radical change. And we have to get you ready for that. Because radical change to the ego child's mind is super scary. I've never said it once to anybody who doesn't go, oh, geez. No, it's really important. First of all, to have a happy life, you need to know you're never alone, that God is always there. You're either using it or you're not, right? That God presents two ways, according to our understanding, through the ego child's mind, which is all about lack and the absence of God, or the highest self way of doing things, which is all about the fullness of God and abundance and gifts and who we really are in our authenticity. We play often between those two selves, but God is all of that. And our journey is to go from the ego child's mind to the higher mind, you see. And often the answer to any question is, well, what mind are you in? To create that, to say that, to feel that, to do that. What mind are you in? If we can make you very aware of the ego child's mind and the switch over, wow, you're on your way. But it's got to be real, can't be a fantasy. This week, I was talking to someone who has God as a complete fantasy. God and all the beneficence of God, all a fantasy. And she wonders why it's very hard to create things. Because it's a fantasy. Fantasy's its own reward. You've won the Academy Award in fantasy. You never had to take an acting class, you see. Fantasy's got to go. And you've got to learn that reality is quite the delicious thing. That nothing here is particularly real. Does that shatter you? I mean, the fact is, this is all one big hologram. This is one big script that you're writing. And many of you are not writing good ones for yourselves, you see. Oh, hi, Pat. Pat calls me Big Red, and he says I'm sticking with that one. That's particularly funny because I'm about 4'10", but oh no, I don't have the Paul Bunyan necklace on today. Oh, and you take care of yourself too, darling. I'm so glad that you're doing well. In fact, I'm glad that all of you are doing well, and I hope you are. I haven't heard from anybody yet that says, I'm over here with Corona listening to you with my last breath, and I hope that's not true. So let's stay well. Okay, so we have to know that about God, what I just put on the table. We also have to know that everything really does work for our good if we're certainly in the energy of our highest selves and we're creating that. Otherwise, what are we creating with the child's mind? We're creating either something bad happening, or, and bad is in quotes, of course, because there really isn't anything bad. If you wake up and go, whoa, I shouldn't have created that, right? Then how is that bad? But here's the thing. We have to wake up to the fact that we're either creating something that we don't want, or we're creating the fear that it may happen. Now I want you to know that in most people, the fear is enough to stop you. The fear is enough to stop you. This is what happens in public speaking a lot of times. That's the number one fear in America. Public speaking, okay? So we say, oh my God, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to give a speech. It's going to be awful, and I'm going to try to tell a joke and nobody's going to laugh, and I'm not going to be articulate, and I'm going to freeze, and I don't know what you're afraid of. But the fear alone is enough to keep you away from public speaking, so you never learn anything else. You see? The fear is enough. You may never have failed in that. The fear is enough. So many people who are just particularly starting spiritual work and work on themselves are afraid because, oh my God, something bad will happen. I'm creating something bad. And no. You're probably not creating anything bad. I mean, you could, but most people don't. Most people just create the fear. And that's enough. I say, if you are aware that everything works for your good, if you're aware of what mind you're in, so you can, in a fraction of a second, change to the higher mind. You can do that, by the way. If you are aware that you're never, never alone, that the whole universe is behind you, it'll help you learn what you need to learn and do what you need to do, even in tough circumstances. That's a really good thing for you to know. That alone, that I've said, gives you the peace that we talked about before, the peace that God promises beyond all understanding. We know that if we're diagnosed with something terrible, God's right there in it. And we'll learn what we have to do and do what we have to do in that. We know that God's everything. And it's all right. My clients are so cute. They say sometimes, we hear you say it's all right. And that gives us comfort. And you know what? That makes me very happy. If you hear it's all right. It's really not me saying that to you. It's you saying that to you. And when it brings peace, it's wonderful. Okay. Because it's all right, because God's there and the learning experience is there and you're open to it. It's all right. We're going somewhere. You see? So, back to Dr. Yance. Yes, indeed, be keenly self-aware. There we are. You have to learn to do that, by the way. Do you know that? Nobody is born self-aware. Everybody is born self-absorbed. That's what kids are supposed to do until they're 8 years old. And really until it goes on beyond that. But we learn it real well before we're 8 and carry it on to 12 or 13. The fact is we are very self-absorbed. We see everything relative to us. Everything is our fault. Our dad works too hard. It's our fault. We're not interesting enough. Blah, 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 blah. Right? That's how things are formed. That's how issues are formed in the best of families. And then we have to learn what we're doing and what we've taken forward into our adulthood. And we need to find out what the truth is beyond that lie we told ourselves based on appearances. So sometimes we just have to realize there's more to know about ourselves even when we don't see it. I'm going to say all the time, we don't see it. And even if you say, I do see this issue, I'm going to say you don't see the source of this issue. Because most of the sources of this issue happened in the womb, energetically somehow in the womb. And therefore, we have this chemical coming into us that we don't understand because we're just pure, undeveloped love in the womb, right? And when we get born, we start looking for the answers. None of this is conscious. That support that odd thing that we had. And that's why we see the world a certain way. And this is why you can have 4 siblings in a family and they all see the world and their parents and their childhoods differently. So guys, let's not belabor this point except to say there's work to be done. Let's do it. Okay. His next point, Dr. Yance, is find genuine connections. He says, because we're all humans, we all have something in common. Seek to truly understand people around you. Ask thoughtful questions, listen intently, developing a genuine understanding of and conversation to the people you are with. You are more likely to feel genuine and authentic yourself. I have something to say about that. Are you surprised? Oh, yeah, I have something to say about everything. That's at least what my husband says. I think it's really important to connect with people for the right reasons, to have partnership for the right reasons. In other words, many times we attach to people because we are insecure and we don't really connect with them because we are nothing but love and we're supposed to love them and be loved, by the way. many times we are loving only when we're sure that somebody loves us. That is a lesser form of love, isn't it? Instead of just being, I mean, we should love because that's all you are beyond the issues. That's what you are. I think that's good enough reason to be yourself, right? So I don't think genuine connections just happen. I think that the ideal thing is for you to genuinely connect with you. Your most important relationship is with you. And in the exploration of the self-discovery, the self-awareness, guess who you discover? You discover everybody else. There's a point in everybody's progress, too, where they are keenly disappointed in everybody else. They say, these people are not aware, these people are not awake, they're just talking about themselves. That's a phase, and they move through that. They may have more judgment to go and more self-vilification. And then all of a sudden, the oddest thing happens. All these people that they thought weren't aware, weren't awake, weren't nice, weren't this, weren't that, were mean, or, or judgmental, they all change. And they haven't changed. It's the person that is perceiving that has changed. They're not judgmental about people anymore. They're just loving and kind, and they accept people where they are. So, in my opinion, I think all of these things that he's mentioning, while they're wonderful things, they're rather umbrellas that you stand under. One big umbrella of find genuine connections. But I'm telling you how to do it. You gotta go and get in relationship to yourself, because you see everything in relationship to yourself. We've laughed for a long time, my husband and I, because he finds a lot to criticize sometimes, like my stacking the pans. I've told you that before. I don't stack the pans, right? He stacks the pans meticulously. And in the very beginning of our relationship, he was very unhappy that I didn't stack the pans. And I said, that's not important to me. I like it when you do it. If you want to do it, that's great. But I'm not going to take the time to stack the pans. What I think is important, which is I'll work, I'll talk to someone, counsel someone, I'll write, I'll do all the things that are on my plate to do. I'll clean the kitchen, I'll do things. But stack the pans, I'm not going to do. That's not important to me. And he got it, and we understood. So I've laughed because we talked about this. What was he reacting to? He was reacting to something in him that propelled him to stack the pans. And it's not my business to say, well, what is that? Except in session, which he's not in. I'm married to a wonderful man. So it's really important that he gets to do what he needs to do. Why not? I get to do what I need to do. Why not? So then there becomes no argument. But we see what we see that's important to us according to our backstory. You understand? Sometimes we just, if you're in a session with me, we get rid of it. Sometimes they're just things that people live with. I have something that I don't even care about working on, but that I've lived with a long time. It is my fear of, are you ready for this? Wet bread. I can't stand wet bread. Pickle juice gets on my sandwich. Oh my God, I can't eat it. Oh, it's horrible. Well, I'll tell you where it came from. But again, this is not where it came from, not source of origin, right? But when I was ill, my father had a secret remedy to help us all be well. And it was a flat piece of toast in a kind of flat, I can still see the flat white bowl. And then he would pour warm skim milk over it. And you were supposed to eat that. Even if you were already nauseated. If that didn't do it, I don't know what would. Anyway, there was no sugar, there was no cinnamon, there was nothing on it. It was just toast warm skim milk. Oh my God, it was so traumatic. Certainly, after a certain point, I stopped eating completely, rather avoiding that. But he didn't mean it mean. He really thought that that was going to help. That was some sort of a wives' remedy that he must have gotten when he was a kid. He could take it. I could not take it. And still to this day, no wet bread and no mashed potatoes or anything that looks like bread that's wet. Whoa! And I don't particularly want to get over it. I just avoid that. But anyway, I'm not going to dip my donut in the coffee. All right, here we go. This is our next point that Dr. Yance makes. And I think this is great. Don't be perfect. Isn't that lovely? I want you to know from our point of view, from what we talk about here is consciousness. From the point of view of consciousness, we're all imperfect, and the only perfection, pardon me, more pollen, is God. There is a perfection. It is the way the system works. It's the way God works. It's the way energy works. That's perfection. But we're all imperfect. So the perfection that we all seek lies actually in the imperfection. Because when you accept the imperfection and you've done your work on consciousness, something opens in you and you are awed by this system of God in which you work. There's your perfection. But the odd thing is you don't have to be perfect anymore because it's the system of God that's perfect and you're just doing the best you can within that system because we're all human. So this whole idea of driving ourselves to be perfect is standard in our own minds, you see. There is no driving to be perfect. This whole Judo Christian belief that we have to somehow please God and earn his love and respect came out of issues, ladies and gentlemen. It did. Because God is to be opened to, not to be earned. God has always been love, except for man's distortion of that love into fear, into anger, into other things. And the nice thing is kind of like an ice cube, right? An ice cube is water. That's why it can turn back into water. Nothing can turn into itself, which isn't at first itself, but all this rage, all this fear, all this whatever we've got inside of us can turn right back into love. But you're going to have to, what? Change. Do some work on yourself. Realize deep levels of what's motivating you. That may not be in your best interest. Your issues are pretty easy to spot for anybody who's looking because they're not in keeping with an ascendancy that you are, with this love-based incredible self. The issues are usually self-motivated. They're usually, but in a very egoic sense, self-indulgent, greedy, all of those adjectives that are unkind, that are associated with the lesser self. And the lesser self isn't a judgment when I say that. It just means it's not optimal. It's not the best self, you see. So I think that's a good one. Don't be perfect. Do the best you can. But the perfection lies in God. And will we ever attain it? We can't possibly attain it, guys. We can just, what we can attain is our best self and being as loving as we can. That's what consciousness, deeper levels of consciousness and enlightenment are about. Knowing what we know, that God's right there, no matter what, that God's got us all, and that we do what we can to the best of our ability. It's a nice life. I suggest it for you. All right, the next one is, according to Dr. Yance, be present. He goes on to say, in the middle of a conversation with someone, you may drift off. Let me tell you what I think about that. I think that's not possible other than just a few seconds here and there. I think that being present is being mindful, and I think that that's what wakes up in these deeper levels of consciousness and enlightenment. So you can try without work on yourself, go right ahead, but don't vilify yourself. You see, I think that people vilify themselves when they can't do this because an article like that makes it sound so easy, with all due respect to Dr. Yans. It's not easy. It's one of those things that you open to in God. And then all of a sudden, you are present. And you do stay present. And you do notice, by the way, when you wander away, and you bring yourself back and you're able to hold it. So, for heaven's sakes, don't vilify yourself for something. It's like beating up a kid who can't drive the car at 8 years old. Well, 8-year-old kids are not supposed to be able to drive the car. It's ridiculous to beat a child up for that. Many times, our parents, because of their insecurity and their unknowingness, have instilled in us the fact that we should know something that we shouldn't know because of our age. I remember a dear friend saying to me that one time her mom was... her father had had an accident or something. I may be remembering the story poorly, so please forgive me if I am. But her mother, who had a small child at the time, had to drive, and this was before everybody had to lock into seatbelts, I believe, had to drive to the airport to rescue her husband. It was on that side of town. It was pouring down rain, terrible thunderstorm. And this 4-year-old child was standing up in the front seat trying to read the highway signs. Her mother was yelling at her to read the highway signs, and the child was 4, hadn't learned to read yet. And she remembered that experience. There are things that happen like that. You know, we all hear that story and go, but the fact is, if you are the one that is that insecure, we may be asking someone to do something that they're not age equipped to do. Nevertheless, something like that does stay with us, you see, and we've got to realize you weren't supposed to be able to read the signs. Why isn't that all right? Perfectly all right. Because it does translate into our being hard on ourselves later on in life, being hard on others later on in life. Everybody's supposed to know, right? It's not good not to know. Bad things happen when you don't know. Your mother yells at you. You understand. Now I want to go back to my little list, my long list. We were to, I believe, number 9. I don't even think 2 weeks ago we got... we even did this list, so I'm backtracking to 3 weeks ago that we did this How to Be Authentic list of mine. Number 9 was really know that as you journey deeper into yourself, even if you don't know now, there are going to be gifts and abilities that you don't know you have that are going to start coming out. It's fascinating, really. You're going to be able to, you're going to be very intuitive. You might all of a sudden find a gift for writing or painting or doing something that you've never even thought about before. Sculpture, God knows what it could be. Business. Not only as you evolve do these gifts start coming out because you're opening to deeper levels of who you are as spirit, but all of a sudden you may go back and pick up something that you never developed as a child. I think that in many families, I know this was true in my own family. My uncle was a concert pianist. He ended up being a very, very fine doctor with quite the diagnostic ability. My mom was a very fine singer. She ended up being a French teacher, right? I'm in my family, I did a lot of theater and film. It has evolved into teaching, and certainly teaching what I teach now, and it's also evolved into a ability to energetically do psychology and heal on that level. We have to let these talents and gifts and abilities evolve. It's certainly not too late. Even if all of a sudden you're waking up to, I want to do this, and I've never allowed myself to do that, but I remember wanting to do it. I've had many conversations like this with people. I remember wanting to do it when I was 13 years old. Well, then, for God's sake, what are you waiting for? Go on and do it, right? Let's go on and do it. I think it's extremely important for you to wake up to that and give yourself permission to do it. Take a course. What are you going to do? Fail? If you learn something, you're not failing. For heaven's sakes, do it. Number 10. This goes back to be keenly self-aware and what he said, but I have a little different way of saying it. And that is, you're going to have to constantly be aware of your motivations. This is aware of self, certainly, but it's a deeper level. It isn't just aware of your actions and what you're saying and what you're feeling. It's aware of why you are saying, acting, feeling that way. Your motivations reveal everything. They reveal your issues if they're present, and they reveal lovely motivations if they are there. Most of the time, at one point in our progress together, you're going to find your mix of everything. And when I go after saying, well, that's not entirely pure, what I mean is, let's keep the pure part, the part that really is motivated by love, and let's take out the adulterated part that has a selfish motivation. Let's find out why you're having to do that instead of just staying in the grace and goodness of God and being generous with that, you see? Good. So what you're motivated by is really what reveals things. Most people stop on the surface and just see what they're doing. Or they can be, and here's another word that's very important, I think, for all of us, avoidant to ever looking beyond. Most of us don't realize and don't want to realize that we're mixtures of light and dark. If we have been reared with a secret fear that we're really a bad person, by the way, most people that are reared with that have absolutely no evidence that they're a bad person. It's just what they surmised from the way they were treated when they were young. Then you get into your adulthood and you don't want to be reminded that anything could possibly be wrong with you. But part of coming to real peace and authenticity, and by the way, happiness, has to do with your accepting yourself as a whole. You know, that we are not nice people. Of course, I'm not a nice person, but I'm also a very nice person. Which do I choose? You know, I think of that old story about the wolves. Do you remember that story? So two wolves are fighting, all right? And they say, which one wins? And the answer is the one you feed. The one you feed. Well, that's a kind of a metaphorical story for this, isn't it? Because are you feeding the dark or are you feeding the light? What are you feeding? And I'll tell you, I don't know a better way to feed the light than doing work on yourself. Than challenging these old things that brought darkness in, brought lesser motivations in. I say challenge. Is it going to be painful? Absolutely it's not. We're going to talk about it. We're going to say, well, do you see this happened? And all of a sudden you wake up and you go, oh my God, absolutely I see that. I see that this wasn't about me at all, and yet I took it so personally that I've vilified myself my whole life for it. You get it? Oh, thank you for those hearts, dear heart. Why vilify yourself? Everything is explainable, and not one thing can be explained because you're a bad person, because you're not. You might not have had the information. You might have been fighting for your life in your head. I mean, there are all sorts of reasons for doing the things you did. That doesn't honestly matter. We just need to make your peace with it. What matters is right now, and which wolf you're choosing. Which one do you want to feed, the light or the dark? You wouldn't be listening to a show like this if that decision wasn't already made. I know which one you want to feed. So let's do it, okay? Go about it, kids. All right. Number 11. Resolve that you are going to be working on yourself the rest of your life. The ego says, oh, I don't want to do that. How unfun. The fact is, that needs to be awake. You know, I said last week, this is no more than at one point in my life when I really realized that God was entirely present all the time with me. And I decided I really wanted to work from that energy. Pardon me. It was as if I finally took the phone to that part of me, that divine part of me, off the hook and left it off the hook. So that if my guides, if God, if anybody had anything to say to me that I needed to hear, any correction that needed to be made, any idea to have out of the box that I hadn't thought of, and boy, do I use this when I'm writing, that they could speak to me, and I was ready, willing, and able at all times to hear their voice. It's been magnificent to do that. A friend asked me yesterday, I have yet to write her, and I plan to do so, how my life has changed with the coronavirus. And I say with all gratitude to God, not at all. You know, not at all. I still work with all my clients on the phone like I always do. I do my work privately after I speak with them. I based on the access keys they give me. I write. The only thing I'm doing is wearing a mask when I go to the grocery store and my little gloves, and I take my bottle of heavy-duty 151 proof alcohol and spray everything. That's all I do. Now, that doesn't mean that you're keenly affected by this. And my heart goes out to you if you own a restaurant, if you are trying to get in to see a sick family member, a friend, if you are one of those people that are alone in the hospital. My heart really aches for you. If you are losing your business, if you're wondering how you're going to make it. You know, I understand. I live in a small town. I see my friends affected by this. And yet I know that God is present in all of this. God is very present in the middle of it all. It's present with ideas. If somebody's a friend of mine, I'm helping you create other solutions. If you're a client of mine, I'm doing the same thing. We have to think out of the box now. We have to, this is if we will stop thinking of this as a pall and think of it as an opportunity to reinvent, recreate, serve in a better way, we might come up with ideas that really take ourselves and everybody else forward. Really important to do so. I think that I'm supposed to tell you that. It's certainly been a good opportunity for me. I think I referred to earlier, I'm not a very good villain. It's given me the opportunity to see what I did wrong in this book I got to rewrite certain things, right? And I've gotten a lot of wonderful books and a great mentor I can trust. And a lot of really good books that he turned me on to that are telling me exactly what to do. So as soon as I can assimilate this vast knowledge, maybe I can do something with it, you know. Time for change, kids. That we are working on ourselves the rest of our life, learning, growing, evolving, even with something's hard. Guys, why isn't that great? The other side of that is stuck, death, not being very happy. We're happy when we're learning. I always knew when I was coaching actors that if you could stand on your mark in front of that camera and suffer, if that's what the script called for, of course, and suffer and pour your guts out and have it real, and still would rather be there than any place else on the earth in that moment, you're an actor. And you're an actor for the right reasons. Right? It's the person that stands on their mark and does nothing but wonder what I'm thinking about them or what their casting agent is thinking about them that really should go do something else. Or be in class and get over their issues, right? Find different things to motivate them. So we are going to be working on ourselves our whole lives. We are going to be self-aware. We are going to spot lesser things in us and challenge them and work through them. We are going to see how we can add more value to the world. Doesn't that sound good? It is good. It makes life worth living. It makes you happy. You're learning something new. Yes, it's hard. My mother told me a story years ago that I came home wailing from first grade because, and I think almost my exact quote was, "Teacher wants me to read and I don't know how to read." And I was very sad about that. The fact is, I missed the point, didn't I, that little child's mind, that the whole point was, it's hard while you're learning it. It's a joy while you're doing it. You know? But I see people caught still in that moment that I was in 6th grade. I can't do it, they say. If you're telling yourself you can't do anything that you want to do, oh, guys, come on. Let's work on it. Let's get it out. Let's not do that. Challenge yourself. Go and learn how to do it. And it's going to be hard. Just like it's hard for me. Right now I'm learning to write, having written a book already, right? I remember a remark by Valerie Bertinelli. I think that's her name. She's an actor. She was on some sort of soap opera. No, not soap opera. Sitcom, I believe. I'm not sure. I mean, I can see her face, but I'm not sure what she was in. But it was real cute because after all that was over, I remember somehow this information came to me. I read an article on her or something. And she made this statement. Well, they asked her, what is she going to do now that her show is over? And you know what she said? I think I'm going to go learn to act. I thought that was so beautiful that she said that. It was not ego-driven at all. We got to learn what we don't know. Oh, kids, stop being ashamed of that and just go learn it, right? Yeah, let's do that. And that's what I mean. Let's do that. Let's, how young can you keep your brain? I think it's marvelous for us to learn new things. If you all haven't signed up for the streaming the audio things in your car at the library, a good book, for God's sake, go do it. Let's learn some stuff. Let's learn some stuff when we're just driving around. Yeah. Okay. Number 12. This may challenge some of you, but nothing is a sign. not in the way most people mean it. I take that as a sign. No, nothing's a sign. And if it is information for you, you may be sensing there's information in there for you, but a sign it is not. And if we stop with the surface of it being a sign, we never learn what we're supposed to learn. We never get what we're supposed to get out of the situation. We reach for signs because we're insecure. And what we need to do is make ourselves more secure and understand ourselves better. You're wanting information and you're wanting reassurance when you reach for signs. What mind do you think that's coming from? It's not coming from the highest self when you need information and want reassurance. We want, everybody in their ego child's mind wants a guarantee from God. You're not going to have one. You're either going to go with God in cooperation and open your mind and see what you're supposed to see there, or you're not. But signs are not sent the way the ego child's mind wants them to be sent. And I whenever I hear anybody say, I see a sign, or I took it as a sign, this is the one, because, I look at that and I go, I think we have something else to work on, which is, fantasy, taking away the fantasy. Signs are just never what they seem. Nothing is what it seems. If you don't feel good today, even that's not what it seems. There are a lot of factors that go into everything. So let's learn those, and that's consciousness. There's not one answer for everything. That sign that you so think is revealing something about where you are in your consciousness journey. That's all. Look past, look past, look past. Okay. 13 is accept, for heaven's sakes, that you are, that we are, that everybody is a big fat liar until you're not. I love a big fat liar. I have a dear client that is a dear friend of mine who came in one day to his session, sat in the green chair opposite my desk and said, I'm a big fat liar. I thought that was just great. I laughed so hard because we had been working on what's the truth here. Let's look beyond the lies. And I thought that was just the cutest remark, so I've often used it. I think it's really important to realize you are. We all are. Our ego child's mind is nothing but a lie and partial truths and distortions. That's what the cognitive distortions that I taught you 6 months ago are all about. We tell ourselves lies because they're based on appearances. They're not the whole truth. And everything where we're coming from when we're kids and when we learn these things is all about us. So anything that's happening out there that's somehow random, chaotic, cruel, or anything else is because of us. We're not the good ones. We're not good enough. We're not smart enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not this enough. We're not enough. And that's simply not true. That's a big fat lie. All those things are big fat lies. And there are a lot more big fat lies in you that you don't even know that are driving the bus. What do I mean by that? Well, lies are often our motivations. Until they're not. We've got to stop being motivated by these lesser things. That's why it's so important to look at the motivations and not avoid them, not go into fantasy somewhere. You see, that's what we do, though. We go into fantasy somewhere, and we never go in that direction and look at what's wrong, because we don't want to see what's wrong. We just want to create something wonderful, and we create it in fantasy, but you can't create it in reality in fantasy, because fantasy is its own reward. You don't have to be challenged with anything. There's a reason that these little fairy stories in our childhood end with, and they lived happily ever after, because even the people who wrote those darn things couldn't figure out how to deal with the problems that occur when people live together. Yes, one of the reasons I love the musical, it's a Stephen Sondheim musical called Into the Woods. Do you all know that musical? Wow, is it great? And I like it so much because certainly this is what I've always seen too. First of all, the music is fabulous, and the story is fabulous. There's a magical wood, often appears in fairy stories, right? Magical wood, and there are several fairy characters, fairy stories. Like Little Red Riding Hood was one of them, and the wolf, and the childless couple that wants a child, and I think the witch that wants, before she grants them the child, wants them to do these three things together. There's stories like that, right? And it all takes place in the woods, and all these characters come together and interact in these woods. Now, the interesting thing about this is about midpoint, or maybe slightly before midpoint, everybody gets their wish. Everybody gets their wish. Everybody is fulfilled. Everybody gets their wish. And then Sondheim, brilliant man that he is, has it all go to hell. Quite interesting. Absolutely fascinating. You find out what happens to these people with these thought patterns after they get everything they want. Darlings, nobody lives happily ever after in that old sense. And here's the irony of God. Everybody lives happily ever after, when everyone is in cooperation with themselves, their highest self, and with the God that gives you everything. Which do you choose? Here we are again. Which wolf do you feed? What do you want to believe? You're going to get what you believe. Years ago, I had a darling young man who's still a friend. I hope he's doing well. I haven't talked to him in a while. Who was very, very upset about his car. He was very young, and he had taken this car into a car place. They'd kept it for something like an outrageous number of months, like 5 or 6 months, 4 months, something like that. They had kept his car. He was down to one car. He has a wife and kid. Everybody needs more than one car, right? So he called them and said, I want my car back. And they were charging him an outrageous sum of money. And he called me very upset. And I said, well, you've got two things to believe here. Number one, you're screwed. Because you don't have that kind of money. You're screwed. How's it feel? Other thing is that you can certainly talk to the head of this company and tell them they have kept this car for an outrageous number of months, and now they're charging you this outrageous fee for what they've done to the car when they themselves have kept it on the lot all that time, and you want recompense for that. And he said, well, I want to believe the second one. I said, well, then go and create the second one. Go talk to the manager. And when he talked to the manager said, I can't believe that we've kept it that long. I can't believe we've inconvenienced you that much. I'm so sorry. How about $200 for this? And they were charging him thousands before, you see? And he said, okay. I also want to put on the table here, darlings, that no is never no until you find out it's really no. No is never no until you find out it's really no. For God's sake, do some research. All right? Go and talk to people. You create what you get by your thinking. Do you want to be in the lack of God or in the abundance of it? Then you get control of which mind you're in. Okay. Moving along. 14 is shatter fantasy. We have to shatter fantasy, kids. Fantasy is interesting to me. It's fascinating to me because there's overt fantasy and there's a very quiet, covert fantasy as well. You don't let anybody know what we're doing there except us. And yet you can see it when you look at someone's life because they hadn't created anything for themselves. It's very, very important that you are honest with me or someone like me who's helping you and say, here's how I'm using the fantasy. They're going to find different ways you're using it, by the way, too. That's what our jobs are. Here's a little piece. Here's a little piece that wasn't obvious. Are you ready to get rid of it? In that, we have to be emotionally honest with ourselves. I think that emotional honesty is really quite the prelude to happiness, to being happy with yourself. I think all of us have our little devices and have had of pretending that we're something else, pretending we have something else, pretending we have talents for something else that we don't have. I have a client that continues to tell me what a good businesswoman she is, and she can't create anything. So she doesn't make good business decisions. She has one client. Come on, you're not a businesswoman. There's nothing wrong with that, except the illusion that you are. Let's do something else. Let's find out what you're really good at. Let's do that. Okay? We may find out that you are a really good businesswoman underneath, but right now you're not making decisions like that because you're not responsible for your energy. And if we find that person, she's going to have a lot more clients. So I don't know what we are going to find out underneath who you really present to be. But there is a real person there. And then you don't have to pretend anymore. It's wonderful. But see, we're all afraid to get to that emotional honesty because we don't want to hear anything bad about ourselves. Oh, dear God. That might be evidence of what I feared all along about myself. Guys, I'm here to tell you something really important. We all have done things that we are not proud of and that we're ashamed of. But underneath that, you're nothing but love and nothing but God at your essential best. Happiness is found when we drill down to that and let the rest go. And in the leaving the rest go, realizing it's not so much about what we've done as it is what we're doing right in this moment. What's that about? Well, you've heard me say this sweet little thing in past things, but it's one of my favorite Chinese little proverbs. I don't know what it is, quite frankly. Little saying that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, second best time today. But if you stand in regret that you didn't do it 20 years ago, you never get around to today. So that's got to be resolved. All that beating yourself up, all that regret. Did you get that from your mama or from your daddy or from both? Where'd you learn that from? That was going to get you anywhere. And by the way, one of the cognitive distortions is if you beat yourself up, that motivates you to do something. What? You better know that one, because that's a lousy motivation. And yet, that's part of the motivation in our ego house minds. Why can't you just do something for the joy of doing it because it's the right thing to do? Because you want to express yourself that way, you see? Because you want to share. Okay. Next one, 15. We have to make our peace with reality. This moment, right here, right now. No matter what's going on with you, no matter what is happening in your life that's so awful, right here, right now is always fine. You're always safe in right here, right now. This is the gift, isn't it? A big gift of mindfulness. You're safe right here, right now. We don't like mindfulness, our ego child's minds, because we have learned that reality hurts. I am here to tell you the reality is the only place you can create from. And it's a very good place indeed, but we're going to have to prove it to you through our work on yourself, the work we have that we do on ourselves. You've got to prove it to you. You see, reality is preferable to everything else. We've learned that fantasy is preferable to reality. It's got to go. Okay, next one, 16. We must learn to be discerning. That's a gift from God, discernment. We should, and I think more and more, attract people who are the real thing, authentic people. I see a lot of times where we are in our life, we form friendships on that level of consciousness. So if we, for example, attract bad partnerships, we attract people that are equally mad at their husbands so we can bitch, bitch, bitch. Right? Not a good thing. Because what is better for you is to attract people that are loving and good and kind and real, so that you can challenge yourself to rise above who you are, not to be like them, but to be the best of you as well. When I say you are nothing but love, you are nothing but love. But what makes you not vulnerable in that lovingness, in that generosity and kindness, is another gift from God, which is discernment. You've got to see that every single person has an agenda, and you've got to see what it is. Without personalizing, without mind reading, which are issues from the cognitive distortion list that I gave you a long time ago. We just want you genuinely to discern without judgment where they're coming from. See, your best friends, whether you know it or not, your best friends are the ones that have the same agenda as you. Isn't that something? You and I are good friends because we have the same agenda. That's why it feels good, right? Even if I'm saying something kind of hard to take in. But everybody has an agenda. And some people have agendas that are not at all good for us. Not at all. The mugger on the street has an agenda that is completely opposite your agenda to keep your money. The scam artist, same thing. So we've got to wake up and realize everybody's got an agenda. Now this is operating below the conscious level for most people, right? And I'm saying, why? Let's bring it up to consciousness. Let's be a more discerning human being. That everybody has an agenda, nothing wrong with that. If the agenda is opposite yours, not so good. Except in one case. So you go to a therapist like me who is really challenging you to look at your stuff, and you don't want to. So you turn against the very person that's telling you the truth. How about a friend that has been the only one that's ever told you the truth? And you would rather go to these friends rather than listen to them? You see, there's something tricky in all of this, because in psychology, we can make bad things good and good things bad. We have the ability to do that in our minds. The way to fix that is to absolutely have a dedication for the truth. Be able to listen to everything. Why couldn't you listen to something that is not good about yourself? Unless you're taking it and running with it and self-attacking and stabbing yourself all over with that information. It's just information. All you've got to do is listen to it, consider it honestly, whether it's valid or not, make it changes in your life if it isn't, and throw it away if it isn't valid. Do something if it is, throw it away if it isn't. But the reason you don't want to hear some of these things that we're doing is because you're so busy beating yourself up that you can't hear anymore. You're supposed to hear it. It's supposed to take you on a trip. It's supposed to make your life better. And you don't want to hear anymore. Look at what you're doing to yourself. People beat themselves up terribly. There's no reason to, and it's in the way. That's one of the things I really want you to work on, stopping. There's no reason to self-attack. Absolutely no reason. Go back to that lesson that I gave you about primary emotion and secondary emotion. The self-attack is always in the secondary emotion. That's got to go. Primary emotion is just what you're dealing with in the situation. Okay? You know, somebody dies, your dad dies. Okay? You've lost your dad. There's grieving involved. There's the immediate feelings around how he died and in what circumstances. And then the secondary. Oh, he never loved me. I have these deep regrets that we never, resolved anything, that we, if my own father didn't love me, then nobody else can. And you can keep going on and on and on and on and on and on. Secondary has got to stop. Primary is the only thing to react to respond to, I should say, instead of react to. Some of it's reaction. You need to know the difference. Here's another one. Between responding and reacting. Reacting we do out of the ego child's mind, and a lot of times we react out of unconsciousness. Unconscious motivations. Responses are more deliberate. They're thought through. I would rather you respond than react. But it depends on what mind you're in. You understand? Good. Okay, next one. What's our, 7 minutes left. Okay. In your work on consciousness, we learn to be more specific in terms of the words we're using. And we have to get our thinking straight around certain words. Like when we're talking about being transparent as a person, we don't mean being exposed. Right now, I try to be on the radio with you and with everything I say, very transparent. And I say this to give you an example for you. I'm trying to be very honest in the moment with you. And you may think you know me in that, and some of you do, because some of you are friends of mine. But there's a whole life of me that I never get to express that might be entirely personal, yours too. But it doesn't have anything to do with us being transparent in this moment. I can give you the best of me right now. I don't have to talk about, what I still feel I'd like to work on in me. I think sometimes because our language isn't terribly specific, we mix these things up. And we think that if we're being truly honest and transparent, that we're going to be exposed in some way. And I want to tell you that, we've done some radio shows on the imposter syndrome. It's when we are putting something on the top of our transparency because we haven't thought through what being transparent is. Does that make sense? You don't have to be exposed. I don't even think it's appropriate to be, Granted, I was reared in a different era. In that different era, we did not talk about what went on in the bedroom, for example, or what goes on in, certain areas of our lives. Now, everything is kind of out there. I think it's important for us to reach a certain level of our own transparency, of our own honesty. But that doesn't mean that everything is going to be out on the table, or you have to talk about that in any detail or anything like that. Just be who you are, as authentic as you can possibly be in the moment. It does help to get right with things that we think are wrong with us, many of which I've revealed here and told you my motivations. Thank you for still opening your heart and taking me in. That means a lot to me. Some people wouldn't, and that's okay too, because we all have our right to feel the way we feel, and we can only feel the way we were trained to feel until we go on this search for the authenticity of us, at which time we find somebody who is much kinder and more open and more generous, and someone who's made lots of mistakes and who has compassion for themselves and for other people. Now we're talking about transparency. That's a transparency that I can buy and that is real. Next one, my number 18, but I've been talking all around other things too. You've got to learn that your fear is not a force, even though it feels like a force. It is love at its base that you have learned to do something else with. It was, in other words, love that couldn't be itself, not in your world. But make no mistake, all of these things that we think are such forces are love. Now, when we were kids, I've got 2 minutes. Okay, I got to hurry this along. When we were kids, if we had a difficult mother and father, we perceived them as a force. In some way, if we are alive still to this day, hello, Ben, we have made ourselves a force in some way by our resistance inside, or our resistance overtly. We have in some way made ourselves a force. Our refusal to love, our hatred, seems like a force to us, you see? And therefore, our force can match their force in some way. You understand? But is there a force of evil? No, there is not. It's the absence of love. Love that can be itself. So all of this thing, I always have clients that come to me and say, oh, my fear feels like such a force. I just, it feels like something beyond me. It's not. We have to dissect it, find out exactly
90 seconds
why you created what you did to be a force too, even though your force looks different from the other force. And we find out that the original force wasn't a force at all, quite frankly. Most of the time we do. Sometimes the mother that is hypercritical and seems like such a force is a weak woman with issues. And when we start waking up to that and see that, that's when life changes. Guys, we're going to stop right there, take up where we left off.
60 seconds.
Next Sunday, 10 o'clock. I'll look forward to seeing you, okay? Do let me know if you all will give me a nice little write-up to let me know whether this new system, the satellite system, worked. Yes, we will, Kat. We're going to start the very thing that I'm talking about right now in more detail. She said, please revisit this next week. I promise I will. I'll give you even more about it because I'm not telling you everything because it's quite a long subject, this one point. Okay, sweetie? So we'll start next Sunday. Guys, I love you very much. Please like us, befriend us. What else? Follow us, share us with your friends. We're trying to get the word around about the show, okay? Love you very much. Y'all be good to yourselves. That's how God loves us. Oh, great connection today. Thank you, Kat, for telling me.
Seconds.
Great to know. Okay, love you all very, very much. Take care. All right? Bye-bye.